This week, Kawasaki announced their Ninja 7 hybrid motorcycle, blending both petrol and electric power to deliver massively improved fuel economy, and Kawasaki themselves have claimed that it will change the game. So is it really that good, or is the tech not quite there yet? Well, in this video, we'll go through all of the details with absolutely everything that you need to know about it so far. Now, on the face of it, the power unit of this bike might not look that impressive, with a 451cc parallel twin that looks similar to the one that they use in their Eliminator 500 mini cruiser, and a 9 kilowatt electric motor that looks similar to the one they used in their recently announced electric bikes. Combined, they make 43.5 kilowatts or about 58 horsepower, or if you trigger their e-boost feature through the switchgear, it goes up to 51.1 kilowatts, which is more like 68 horsepower. It's worth adding though that the boost only lasts for about 15 seconds, so it's only really good for quick overtakes. That means though that really this bike is pretty much equivalent to their 650 class of bikes like the Ninja 650 and Z650, although those bikes make 67 horsepower whenever you want it, not just for 15 seconds. So on the face of it, the performance figures of this new hybrid might sound pretty average, but in the press release, Kawasaki are actually claiming acceleration that can match that of a liter sports bike. In their own words, in terms of dimensions, the Ninja 7 hybrid is a mid-size package offering 650 to 700cc class overall performance, with the instant acceleration to rival that of a 1000cc class super sport model from a standing start, with Kawasaki's e-boost function. I guess the key here is being able to blend in the huge torque that you get from an electric motor in order to get it off the line quickly, but one can only assume that once it's up to substantial speeds, a 1000cc sports bike would absolutely trounce it, with their own ZX-10R, for example, making well over 200 horsepower. Still, it does sound pretty impressive though, and I'm keen to test one out and find out how quick it feels on the road. But ultimately, this project is all about significantly improving fuel economy versus a regular petrol-powered bike, and so another interesting snippet from the spec sheet is that they're claiming consumption figures that are actually equivalent to a 250cc bike. Now, they don't have a 250 in their lineup at the moment, but take the Honda CB300R, for example, at 286cc, that consumes just 3.3 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers traveled, so well down on the 4.5 liters of the Ninja 650. So that's roughly a 25% improvement in fuel economy, although I guess it'll vary significantly depending on what sort of riding you're primarily doing. In fact, Kawasaki are offering 3 different riding modes on this new hybrid. So there's Sport Hybrid, which I'm guessing will give you the most possible punch, Eco Hybrid, which I would assume sacrifices a little bit of peak power to eke out the fuel consumption, and then an EV mode, which runs on the motor and battery alone. Now, this perhaps sounds like the most interesting of the bunch, and the idea of running the bike on electric alone around town might have you thinking that you could save a bit on fuel. And we are certainly used to hybrid cars, for example, being able to do a decent amount of urban miles just on their battery, but actually in the small print here, they say that the EV mode may be helpful for certain situations where quiet riding is appropriate, such as in residential areas or in parking garages. Speed and range are limited. So really, it's more of a sneaky stealth mode as opposed to being able to use it for your full commute. Now, another unusual feature of this new bike is the gearbox, which they say can offer manual or automatically selected gears. Given that there's no shift lever visible in the pictures they've released, nor a clutch lever, I'd imagine it's done through buttons on the switchgear, which would make the riding experience pretty similar to something like Honda's DCT bikes. Now, those bikes, of course, are fully petrol powered, but they use a DCT gearbox or dual clutch transmission so that you can either run them in an automatic mode, or you can choose the gears yourself with a plus and minus trigger on either side of the left switchgear. With this bike though, I guess it's more of a necessity because it's got to be able to blend the petrol and electric power, but still, for some riders who like the idea of something like DCT, it might be a plus. Having no clutch lever, certainly in my experience, does make them a doddle to ride around town with more of a twist and go feel than a regular bike. Now, some of the other interesting features include an auto stop-start type thing, which means the engine will switch off to save on fuel when you're stopped at the lights, for example. Then they've got something called ALPF, or Automatic Launch Position Finder, which when enabled, they say will automatically select first gear at a standstill to make riding off easier. Then there's also a walk mode, which will use the electric motor to slowly creep the bike backwards or forwards, and that makes it a little bit easier to park, especially in tight motorcycle parking bays, and also if you've got to move it backwards uphill. All of this stuff is controlled along with the riding modes through a TFT display, and this also offers connectivity features with their Rideology app, which allows you to view some extra riding data. As for the chassis, well, it looks pretty similar to something like the Ninja 650, and as I said earlier, they say specifically in the press release that in stature it's similar to a 650 or 700cc motorcycle. So you get a steel trellis frame, which is a bit of a Kawasaki signature feature, and if you look at the fairly simple twin brakes up front with the 2-pot calipers, the right way up fork, the wheels and the tires, it does all look a little bit Ninja 650-esque. So I'd expect the handling and ergonomics not to be a million miles off that bike. And for reference, the Ninja 650 is 790mm in the seat, so nice and easy to get your feet down and beginner friendly, and also ideal for commuting. Now in terms of weight, the Ninja 650 is actually pretty nice and light at just 193 kilograms curb, but I'd be impressed if they managed to get a bike with both an engine and a battery to weigh the same, so perhaps 20-30 kilograms more here. But they do say that the battery is intentionally very centrally located in order to minimize the effects on the weight distribution. Now where I'd say they've done a really good job on this bike is with the styling. The electric bikes they announced recently, especially the Naked Z1, just looked a little bit odd because you've got that bit of a gap behind the front wheel where we're used to seeing the engine. But the overall proportions of this hybrid actually look pretty decent to me, if just a little bit more bulky than the 650 equivalent. I also think they've done a nice job on the paintwork, and so perhaps this more familiar aesthetic might help it look like more of a tempting option to what you might call your traditional biker. Now these are actually landing pretty soon in the UK, with Kawasaki saying they'll be in dealers from April 2024. Prices are to be confirmed nearer the time, but I wouldn't expect it to be cheap. The electric bikes, for example, are closer to the 8 grand mark than they are to the 5 of the little 125 petrol bikes that offer similar performance. And so if a 650 costs about 7.5 grand, I'd expect these to be 3 or 4 grand more. So look, I certainly wouldn't expect instant mass adoption, but at the same time, you've got to take your hat off to Kawasaki and say that they're actually making some pretty big moves in these areas. They don't quite look like genuinely tempting propositions unless you're really into your electrics and green tech, but perhaps if they keep developing their hybrids and get more out of the electric side and cut down on weight, it does sound like the performance benefits can be pretty substantial. But as always, I'd love to know what you think of it, so do let me know down in the comments below. And does this look like something you'd be more interested in than a fully electric bike? Let me know your thoughts. I always enjoy reading your comments. And if you want to see more of the latest motorcycle news right here on YouTube, then please do hit subscribe if you've not already. Many thanks for watching today, and we'll catch you in the next one.